this video, we're going to be starting a short tutorial series of how you would go about making a Sudoku game in JavaScript using Express. In this video, we'll set up the Express project and create a board generation API. In the second video, we'll design the UI and link the board in our design to the board generation API. And in the third video, we'll add logic to the game and make it playable. But first, why are we using Express? Express is a minimal, fast web framework for developing web applications using Node.js. It's simple and small, unlike similar frameworks such as Django and Ruby on Rails. This means there's loads of third-party packages that can be installed using npm in order to add the specific functionality we need. So let's get started. So the first thing you'll want to do is create a folder, and you can see I've created a folder called Sudoku, and I've opened that in Visual Studio Code. The next thing you'll want to do is create a new terminal, and we're going to type in node-v, and you can see I'm on version 16.17. If this shows error message for you, then that probably means you don't have Node installed. So if you don't have Node installed, you can go to nodejs.org, and then I recommend you use the version on the left, which is the long-term support version. Once you've done that, you can do node-v again, and it should give you a version number. So now you've done that, we can start to create our project. So first you want to do npm init. Then this is going to set up our package.json file. So I'm going to keep the package name the same, Sudoku, the version's fine, description I don't want, entry point is fine, test command I don't need a git repository, I don't need keywords, author you can put in if you want, I will, and license, that's fine as well. So now if we look in our package.json, you can see we've got this object, and what I want to do is put in another script, which is going to be our dev script, which is going to allow us to restart the server really quickly using something called nodemon. So to install that, you want to do sudo npm install, or I is fine, -g, and then nodemon. I've already got it installed, so I don't need to do it again. But once you've done that, you should have nodemon installed. And then if you add to this a dev script, and you can say nodemon and then index.js. And that's just going to run our index.js, and whenever we save, it will restart the server. So now what we can do is install some of our dependencies. So I'm just going to do Express first, and that's the only one we'll do for now. Express. And now that's done, you can see it's in here. We also have a node modules file now and a package.lock.json file. Now we can create our actual project and start to write JavaScript for it. So I'm going to have index.js, and inside here I'm going to import Express. So I can say const express equals require express. And then I'm going to say const app equals express as a function. And then I can do app.listen. And I need a port for this, so I'm going to define the port here as well. Const port equals, I'm going to go for 3000. I recommend you do the same. Port. And then we can do a callback function, which is going to trigger when this is done, and then we're just going to console.log server started at port, and then the port. Now what we can also do is define some routes. So first I'm just going to do app.get, so it's a get request, and then just slash, and that's going to be our base root. And then as a second parameter, you need request and response. Then we can use this arrow function to send back some data. So I'm going to do res.send. Okay. Now what we can do is start our server. So we can just do npm run dev, because we set up our dev command earlier. And now you can see that the server started at port 3000. So now we can go to localhost port 3000. And now I've done that, you can see that we get back okay. And if I go to another route, we're not going to get that. It's going to give us an error. So we're not going to render our HTML in this video. We're going to do that in the next video, so we can leave this how it is for now. But what we are doing in this video is the board generation. So we can do app.get/board. And then what I'm going to have is request and response, and the same format. And then for now, I'll just say res.send board. So you'll see if we go to /board, we get board back. So that's working fine. Now what we can do is we want to start off with a basic board, and this is how we're going to do the generation by scrambling that board. So you'll see on the screen now that we've got a basic board set up, which just goes from numbers 1 to 9 on the rows, and then the columns just start at a different number. And this is, a fully valid Sudoku board, but it's just very uncommon to ever happen. And you'd be very lucky if you got that. So what we can do is scramble this by using some random generation, and then we're going to have a scrambled board instead. You can see that I've got the board in a 2-dimensional array now, like what you saw just now. And now we can use this to scramble it, basically. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to take the first 3 items and add these to a group, basically, and then generate random numbers, and it's going to scramble them. So for example, if I get the number 0, then this top one is going to be the first item, and then if I get the number 1 after that, this one's going to be removed. So this one is 0, this one is 1, so it's going to be that one, and then the last one is that one. So that's the only remaining one. And I'm going to repeat that for the other ones. And then what we're going to do is we're basically going to flip the board, so rotating it. So instead of having 1, 2, 3 here, it would be on the top 1, 4, 7. And then we're going to be able to just repeat what we did before. And we can use functions to do this as well to make it really easy. So the first thing that I'm going to do is reshuffle this group, and then we're going to have a loop to do the other groups as well. So first what I need to do is generate a random number based off a range of numbers. So I can say for let range equals 2, and then range is greater than -1, and then range minus. And this means that it's going to have the range as 2, 1, and then 0. And when it's 0, we don't need to do the random generation. And this is because once we select one of these numbers, we're going to remove it from the board. So you can see that we have to do math.random. And then we're going to multiply that by the range plus 1. And then we need to do math.floor, and that's going to give us a range of 0 between the range number. And math.floor helps to make sure it's not a decimal either. And bear in mind, we only want to do this when the number is not 0. So if range is greater than 0, then we're going to do the math.random. Else, we're going to set the variable to 0. So our variable is going to be let board index. And we need to put it up there. Otherwise, if we put it here, it would be out of scope. Then we can set board index to math.floor, and so on, math.random, and then otherwise board index is just 0. And that's just easier because we don't need to execute this anyway if it's 0, because the answer will always be 0. Then what we can do is we can get board and then board index. And we need to do 2 things for this. First, what we need to do is add board to our new array, a new board. So we're going to have a new board. Let's define that here. Let new board equals an empty array. Then new board.push. And we also need to remove it from here, which means this can't be a constant. So we need this to be just a let. So then we can do board.splice and then board index and then 1, which means we're only removing 1 item. So that's fine, and that's going to rearrange the first 3, but we also need to do it for the other ones. So we can just say for let group equals 0, group is less than 3, and then group plus plus. And then if we wrap this over the other for loop, then this should repeat 3 times. And then let's finally send the new board instead. So here we can see we get 417, which is different because it was 147 before. Then we get 528, which is different again. And then 369, which is not different, but if we refresh it, we see 396. So this seems to be generating randomly. So now we can rearrange the individual items in the groups, but now we need to move the whole groups as well. So for example, this group could go to the bottom and this group could go to the top. So what we can do is we can basically steal this range code, and we're going to edit that in a minute. But first we want to basically reset the 2 boards so we don't have loads of variables. So I'm just going to say board is equal to new board, and then new board is equal to nothing. So we can basically rinse and repeat and do the same thing, but just with different values. So now we have let board index again, math.floor, that's fine. And we're going to get a value between, if the range is 2, it's going to be 0 and 2 again. So that's fine. But in this case, we need to move the whole group. So inside here, we're going to have the group item. So for let item equals 0, and then item is less than 3, and then item gets increased by 1. And then what we can do is here we're going to have board index times 3, and then here it's going to be board.slice board item times 3 as well. So that means if the board item is 2, then it's going to start at 6, and then it's going to get rid of 6, and then 7's going to move to 6, and then 8's going to move to 6 after that. because 8 would have moved to 7 before that. So that should have worked now, and let's see if it does. And we can see here we get 5, 8, 2. So that's different for sure. Then we get 7, 4, 1, and then 9, 3, 6. So now what we want to do is basically the same thing, but first we need to flip it, because as you'll see, if we go back here, we still have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and that's not what we want. So we want to flip it first. So to flip this, what we're going to do is we're going to reset our boards again. So we're going to do for let y equals 0, then y is less than 9, sorry, and then y plus plus. And then for let x equals 0, it's the same thing basically. So x is less than 9, and then x plus plus. And then new board, and then we can have new board y, and then we need to have new board y x is equal to board xy. But first what we need to do is have new board y equal to just plain values. So we can just say y is equal to, and then 0, 0, 0, 0, and so on. And we need to do this 9 times. So once you've done that, let's test it. So now you can see that it's working because we got 4, then 5, then 6, then 7, then 8, 9, 10, not 10, sorry, 1, 2, 3. And that's working fine. Then all we need to do is do basically these steps again. So what I'm going to do is create a function for these steps first. So let's take this and then get rid of it quickly. And then we're going to have a function, scramble, and yeah, that's fine. And then here we have this, and then we need to pass in the board because that's going to be used, and then we need to create the new board as well. So we don't need this here. Let's move this up to here. Let new board, and then these get reset, let new board, and then finally we need to return new board. And then what we can do here is just set the board to this function. So we're going to say scramble board, and then we can do this again. So we can just say board equals scramble, and then new board, because there's no point resetting that then. And then we can just say board, res.send board. And what we also need here is let new board. So then if we run this, we see we have 6, 9, 3, 5, and so on, and then 6, 8, 7, 5. So now you can see that these are basically fully scrambled and aren't in a specific order at all. So this has now been us building the API that we're going to use, and I think we're done with that. If you found this video useful, please consider subscribing. It's the best thing that you can do to help me, so I'd really appreciate that. And in the next video we're going to be building out the UI and inserting these values into it.